Welcome to Lesson 1, Ideas for Teaching ELA. So I'm going to go through today some of the ideas behind teaching ELA, but I want to kind of situate it as this is the battle of our lives. It's not COVID, it's not Kenny, it's not the Liberals or the Conservatives or the NDP or even debt. The battle of our lives is which reading and literacy strategy we use to teach our students. Now you may say, okay, Colleen, you're being a little melodramatic about this, but think about it. Everything a child does in school is based on reading. And if they don't learn to read, you are now seeing the implications of that. And the philosophy that a teacher gravitates to teach reading has immense ramifications on every child's life. So we're going to start with a little history of reading strategies. Don't worry, it's fun. It's kind of a fun romp through the history strategies. Okay, so we have three main strategies: phonics, whole language, and balanced literacy. So start with phonics, which is basically the knowledge of the relationship between sounds and letters. And children learn to read by sounding out the words. It goes way back to the 1800s with McGuffey readers, which is what you see on the screen here. Then came along whole language, and this was popularized in the 1930s. And Dick and Jane books were some of the first readers in whole language, and they progressed quite a bit from the Dick and Jane series. But basically, there's visual memory process. It's memorizing what the actual words look like the form of the words look like on the page. And the books rely on word repetition and the pictures to support the meaning of the text. So the idea is that if you see the words enough, you eventually store them in your memory as visual images. So the main point behind whole language is for children to understand and enjoy the text. So that's what I said is whole language has come a long ways from the Dick and Jane series to actual kids enjoying the text. So the whole language idea is when kids understand and enjoy reading the words on the page, the words will just pop out. Okay. Then what happened was phonics and whole language. There was like a raging debate in like the 1940s to the 1960s about which way we should be teaching children how to learn. So thus the little boxing ones here. It was like the reading wars. They called it the reading wars. So along came balanced literacy to balance it, to say, hey, you know what? Kids need some phonics, but kids need some whole language. They need to be able to recognize words, and they need to be able to enjoy the literature that they're reading. So the balanced literacy reading researchers and teachers thought that this approach would be the best, and balanced literacy was born. If you want a couple names, Ken Goodman in 1967 presented a paper at the American Educational Research Association in New York City. And in that, Goodman actually rejected the idea that reading is a precise process that involves exact or detailed perception of letters or words. Instead, he argued that as people read, they make predictions about the words on the page using these three cues. So they use graphic cues. What do the letters tell you about what that word might be? They use syntactic cues. What kind of word could it be? For example, is it a noun or verb? And they use semantic cues. So what word would make sense here based on the context? So basically, the modus operandi of balanced literacy is to teach phonics and allow plenty of time for authentic reading and writing, to use predictable text for beginning and struggling readers, to assess students using meaning, structure, and visual analysis on reading records, and to explain reading as an orchestration of meaning, structure, and visual cues. Well, everything was going along swimmingly until the cognitive scientists came along, and then a new battle was at hand. So Keith Stanovich was a cognitive science, and in 1975, he worked at the University of Michigan. And he actually was like, hey, I want to see if Goodman's theories on balanced literacy were actually correct, that people read words through graphic, syntactic, and semantic cues. Well, his conclusion was that Goodman was wrong. And this is a quote from Stanovich. He wrote, "To our surprise, all of our research results pointed in the opposite direction." Stanovich wrote, "It was the poorer readers, not the more skilled readers, who were more reliant on context to facilitate word recognition." So he said that skilled readers could instantly recognize words without relying on context. Other researchers also confirmed these findings with similar experiments since Stanovich's 1975 project. So the cognitive scientists have been at this for a long time, and they have been saying that students, actually the way that balanced literacy is teaching reading actually is not how students actually read. So now we have a different idea for teaching ELA. We have, and you might have heard of this, we have what's called the science of reading. So what is the science of reading? The term science of reading refers to the research, I'm just reading this, the slide here, research that reading experts, especially cognitive scientists, have conducted on how we learn to read. This body of knowledge over 20 years in the making has helped debunk older methods of reading instruction that were based on tradition and observation and not evidence. I have given you a 35-minute video to watch, which actually is a great introduction to the science of reading, because if you've even heard about this term, there are so many ways to define it, but I really like how this video. So make sure that you watch this video, you take some notes, because we're going to be talking about this in class and the specifics of the science of reading. Oops, wrong computer. Here we go. There we go. That's it for this portion of Ideas for Teaching. Stay tuned for part 2.